here's your host, Rod Khleif.
Welcome back to Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I am thrilled that you're here. I have a very interesting guest today on a lot of fronts. He's interesting on a lot of fronts. His name's Sterling Griffin, and Sterling is in the medical development space, medical office development, commercial real estate space. He develops medical offices, which we've never talked about on this show, but you guys may or may not know this. I'm going to start introducing other asset classes on this show, and this is an example of that. It's the first time we've ever talked about this asset class. It's a fascinating asset class that I'm frankly interested in personally. But what else is cool about Sterling is before we started, he went down into my exercise room downstairs and did some affirmations. And if you guys know me, you know I love freaking affirmations. I've got I am statements all over my walls, in my office, in my exercise room, because as you know, anything you put the words I am in front of is an identity statement. And in fact, as a funny aside, you know, I tell people, I used to run down the street yelling this shit. You know, I am courage, I am fearless, I am driven, I am success. And my kids, they come to my boot camps, and that's the question they get most often. Did he really do that shit? And they're like, oh God, yeah, we had to listen to that shit. Now I've got an exercise room so nobody has to suffer through it. But anyway, we're gonna have some fun today. We're gonna talk about motivation and lots of other things. Sterling, welcome, brother. It's great to see you, man.
It's an honor to be here, man. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, I appreciate that. And so why don't you take a little bit of time and talk about your journey, which is kind of cool. You know, you've got some interesting things that have happened to you like I do, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, so I want it to come from you. So talk about who you are and bring us current, if you would.
Sure. Would you like me to start at more of my real estate investing or just my entrepreneurship, kind of the beginning?
Start wherever you like, but you know, if you think it'll add value, any piece of this, I'd love for you to talk about.
Let's start a little further back then, because I think it'll inform how I've created a life that I really love on all fronts. And it really starts 8 years ago when I'm living in my Honda Accord. I'll say this. When I graduated college, I'd never imagined I'd end up homeless, but yet there I was 2.5 years later, driving my Honda Accord to church on New Year's Eve, looking for a handout so that I wouldn't have to sleep in my car again that night. And I remember that day so vividly because all those same negative voices showed up. The voice that says, oh, well, the first one just super critical. Sterling, how did you screw up your life this bad from where you come from?
I want to ask that question. Okay, so I'd love to hear how that happened.
We'll get to it. Don't worry.
All right.
But then the other voices showed up that said, well, it's not your fault. It's your alcoholic mother. It's your absent father. It's their fault. But then the truth came in is that, no, Sterling, it was your choices that brought you here. And it's only your choices that can get you out to somewhere better. In that moment, I made a decision that after a lifetime of struggling with depression, and at that point, 3 months of homelessness, I was ready for something new. And I told myself right then, Sterling, it's time to get out of this position in life and to do it so fast that one day you're going to inspire the person who's sitting where you are right now, because you are not alone. That drove me to not just succeed, not just to have enough to eat, but I had a vision in my mind, kind of a crazy one, that I wanted to grow a business really quickly so that my story, I just had a sense that my story one day could be a voice of hope for somebody else that was just like me. Well, 2 years later from that moment, I became a millionaire with my first company. And it's due in no small part to one main thing, mentors.
Yeah.
Mentors. You see, I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. I don't come from a personal development family. But what changed for me was just a couple months prior to that moment, I started to have belief that I could be someone different. And that happened in Unleash the Power Within.
You went to
with Tony Robbins.
Wow. For those of you who don't know, I spent 20 years following Tony around the planet. Went to my first event 23 years ago, Unleash the Power in Fort Lauderdale. And I was on his team for 8 years. And he's obviously, you can tell, he's impacted every area of my life just by what I talk about on my show. And it's so wonderful to hear that he impacted you like that. That's beautiful. Where was it?
It was in Los Angeles. So that's where I was living at the time.
And this was when?
This was in October 2015 is when I
was at that event, and I was working security at that event.
Wow.
Yes.
A big muscular guy like you probably scare some people.
It's different than you think, but yes. All right, please continue. Sorry.
Yeah, so that was the most important event of my life, for sure, because I showed up to that event, and that was my first month being homeless. And I chose to pay for a ticket to go to that event instead of paying the $250 a month rent to be the fifth in a 2-bedroom, 400 square foot apartment, which is where I had been staying in the previous year up to that point. But I chose to buy a ticket instead of another month because I'd heard through this, I don't know if you heard of this little app, it's on our phones, it says podcasts. So I had recently discovered the podcast app. They weren't popular 8 years ago, and obviously in the way they are today. And when I start looking through it, I'm like, wow, all this information is free. I couldn't believe it. It was incomprehensible to me. But one day I found on the School of Greatness podcast, I saw Tony Robbins. At the time, he was promoting his book, Money, Master the Game, that fall. Yeah. And so I'm listening to this guy. I'm like, he's so inspiring. He came from nothing. He came from a place not unlike where I'm starting from.
Very similar geographic location as well.
Literally, just down the street in Glendora, I think, is where his journey really began. And so I'm like, I got to do whatever it takes because this guy has been where I am and has gotten where I want to be. He's helping people for a living. That was my drive. I want to make a living just helping people in the way that Tony is. So maybe not at the scale. I certainly didn't have that kind of belief, but just to eat and have a place to sleep. That was what was on my mind. So I bought that ticket, and it was the best decision I ever made because on day 3, you know this better than anyone, Rod. At one point, Tony leans in and he says, look, if you take nothing else from this entire event but this following phrase that I'm about to share with you, and you use it, you apply it to your life, you will more than get your money's worth. And of course, the position in life I'm in, I'm on the edge of my seat, literally scooting forward, pen to paper. Tony, please tell me. And he whispers, he says, proximity is power. Who you surround yourself with is who you become. He goes on to explain that the 5 people closest to you are going to determine your trajectory in life, not just financially, but in every qualifiable metric: happiness, ambition, fitness, everything. And so I started taking inventory. I'm like, oh, no wonder I'm depressed. No wonder I don't believe in myself. No wonder I don't have any money. That's the same as the people closest to me. So it became the obsession of my life that I would live by those 2 things that he says, and he repeats them over and over throughout the event: is proximity is power and success leaves clues. Get around higher performing peers that want more out of life, and get around mentors that have already achieved what it is that you want. I believe that achievement actually isn't always so hard. It isn't always hard, especially if we have a proven map in front of us. We don't have to, quote unquote, figure it out. Like somebody that wants to become wealthy through investing in apartments, they should not do it alone. They should talk to you. They should join your mastermind because you've done it and helped so many people.
I paid him to say that, but let me just tell you something. We're talking about peer group, and of course I learned all this from Tony as well. I give him credit every day for proximity is power is absolutely the truth. And I started my own mastermind, actually. I've kind of slowed it down, but there's probably 40, 50 billion in assets represented by that group. I started it here at this compound with 16 hitters, about $1 billion in assets at the time, because I want to be around people who think what I think is hard is easy. And now it's 40, 50 billion. But that also ties into why my warriors are so freaking successful. My mentorship group, because they help each other, they hold each other up. We're somewhere between 180 and 190,000 units that they own. I've only been teaching 5 years. It's because proximity is freaking power. So get around people that want more out of life. So many people default to somebody you went to school with or they work with, and those people, out of their own limiting beliefs or their own fears or their fear of losing you or the fear of feeling less than if you don't succeed, or if they succeed rather and they don't and you don't, they'll hold you back. And sometimes it's family. And so, you love your family, but you choose your freaking peers, right? So anyway, please continue. Peer group is a huge piece of success in anything.
Absolutely. And when I decided that I would stop being so heavily influenced by who I'd inherited in my life, and instead I would create intentional relationships in my life, everything changed. Proactively. Because the people that I knew automatically, they were not going to help me get somewhere better in life. They just weren't. And I remember a lot of those people were family, Rod. Mm-hmm. I had to limit my communication with family, specifically during that time. I felt like my life depended on it.
You got to limit their ability to influence you.
Exactly.
For sure. And sometimes that means cutting off communication. So
and sometimes that meant very specific language patterns when, say, my mom would give me business advice, or my brother would give me business advice, or ambition advice, whatever it was about how I should live my life. I would say, thank you for caring, and I am choosing not to accept your advice because you don't have the results in life that I want. And I said it very gently at first, but if they would repeat it, I would just say, look, you're not going to influence me because I am taking who I receive my advice from to be the people that have what I want in life. So that being said, a month after I had this moment in the car on New Year's Eve, I was having a conversation with a successful coach. My first business was I was an online fitness trainer. Okay, that was the area of my life that I felt like that worked for me. It was working, and people would always ask me, hey, how did you get in such good shape? And so I was like, oh, okay, maybe they'd pay me for this. Well, one day I was talking to a life coach. She was making a couple $100,000 a year. Now, again, from where I was at that moment, it might as well have been $1 billion. It was so much money. Right. And that night we were speaking, and she asked me, well, who's mentoring you? And I said, nobody. I don't have enough money for a mentor. And that answer didn't faze her at all. She said, no, you don't have enough money not to have a mentor. In her mind, it wasn't you get money, then you can afford a mentor. It's you get a mentor so that you can have money.
Right.
My problem was I didn't know how to make it when I needed it. And especially being in America where we have so many options to get money needed to acquire skills. In that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to get a coach. So I said, do you recommend somebody? She recommended somebody that was specifically for what I wanted to do, which is grow an online fitness business. Month later, I bought my first month program. It was $2,500. I used debt to do it and $300 from my dad. Wow. Thank goodness. And I did okay the first month, but nothing dramatically changed. And so going into the second month, I had to make a second $2,500 payment to that coach. And so the coach is calling me. I didn't have the money. I didn't have any more room on credit cards. I was dead in the water. And he said, look, if you don't pay by tomorrow, I'm going to have to remove you from the program. Wow. So I'm thinking, how do I solve this problem? And I'm looking outside my apartment and my eyes fall to my car. It was 2 p.m. By 4 p.m., I wrote and posted an ad on Craigslist. By 9 p.m., somebody handed me $4,000 cash and drove away with my car. Wow. The next day, I took that money, brought it to the bank, deposited it, and sent that coach the $2,500. I'd sold my car to continue working with that mentor. And that was the second best decision I ever made because that month I made $12,000 in my online training business. And 15 months later, I was making $300,000 a month in income.
Holy shit.
From my consulting company.
Holy crap. That's
and it was because
change, bud.
It was life-changing.
Wow.
And it happened not just because of one mentor, by the way, but because as I continued to earn more, I kept reinvesting into my own mindset. I believed into myself, into my skill set, because I knew that the first most important thing that somebody should invest in, if they're not able to at least earn a decent living, earn enough to live a decent lifestyle, is you got to invest in skills. Yeah. You got to grow your skills and you got to grow your mindset.
No question, man. And I have to tell you, wow, because a lot of people wouldn't make those sacrifices. They, out of fear or whatever, they don't make big moves like that. And I will tell you, guys, if you have an opportunity to go see Tony, for God's sakes, go do it. I just can't recommend him enough. I've sent hundreds of people his direction, people that have joined his Platinum Partnership, more than one. Because it will be an epiphany and a pivot point in your life and in your career, in every aspect of your life, frankly, not just the business side of things. It's an emotional mastery, your time management, your relationship skills, and your health and everything. It covers it all. And people think, oh, it's like this guru woo-woo kind of crap. No, it's profound knowledge is what it is. His skill set is the ability to take complex, profound knowledge and communicate it in a way that you retain it and hear it and retain it, which is why, it's impacted. I mean, he's the reason I'm feeding 4,000 children this Saturday, okay? And I've fed close to 150,000 over the last 23 years. I started it because of him. Tens of thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies. We did 1,700 in September. Thousands and thousands of teddy bears to local police departments. We just did 300 or 400 of the Sarasota Police Department like a month and a half ago. And it's because of Tony. He's the reason I lost weight. He's the reason I got out of my first horrible marriage, and on and on and on. Would you agree?
About your first marriage?
No, about Tony in general.
Yes, definitely. I can't tell you how infinitely grateful I am for that man, for his example, for his love for people. Right. I mean, what I saw in Tony is not just a powerful man, but a deeply loving man, someone that gave me permission to access my own heart. I am, by nature, my core nature is very loving, but I shut down that for a long time thinking it was weakness. But in seeing Tony, he's merged love and the ability to choose freely, which is real power.
Did you do some of his other Date with Destiny?
I've done Date with Destiny. Yeah, I did that the next year.
I did Date with Destiny every year, 11 years in a row, until finally the head of his security team, Mike Mealy, was like, "Dude, you're here every year. Just join the freaking team." And then
join leadership.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So, you're making $300,000 a month doing fitness stuff, fitness training.
Well, it was
online
both
training.
fitness coaching, and by that point, I had just transitioned to also helping other fitness business owners grow companies online.
Gotcha.
Because I'd grown my business so fast, I had a number of them reaching out. Because, by the way, the average trainer in America makes $20,000 a year.
They don't make money.
They can't live on the income that they make. They have to supplement with other jobs. And yet I'd come from literally living in my car to making, multiple $100,000 a year just from that in my first year.
Right.
So trainers are hearing this story. They're like, look, you got to share with me what you did. And so I added that in. So together, yes, that's how I was making
So
that
why
income.
the hell would you leave that to do medical office?
Well, this is a great question. It happened because 3.5 years ago, I was standing in the kitchen of my hero, huge, beautiful, gorgeous home. He had a business that had 10 times the size of mine and was making 15 times the profit. I mean, this was the king of my industry.
Okay.
And looking across the table at him, seeing that his business was where I hoped to get one day,
Right.
I had a realization. And that realization was, wait, I'm happier than him. I realized that what my dream was, which was to have a business as big as him, would leave me, if I inherited his emotional state, if I inherited his responsibilities, his lifestyle, that I would be way less happy than I was.
Interesting.
That was a moment. It was a marker.
That was an
where
epiphany.
It was an epiphany moment. Like, more money doesn't by itself mean more happiness.
Right.
And it started having me have this question of, yeah, I like making a lot of money, but am I really spending my time doing what I truly love? How do I get both? How do I get great income and great free time? And I'll say this. A lot of people say money can't buy happiness. And that's just not true.
Oh, I agree.
Because
the poor people say that.
The poor people say that. That's right. That's what they'd want you to believe. That's how they have the life they do.
That's how they justify. That's how they don't get disgusted with themselves. I get hate every day online. I get entitled young men and sometimes women and they hate because they're not happy, they're miserable, and I try to. Sometimes I get sucked in and get a little ugly, but I try not to. I try to encourage them and empower them as much as I can. But sometimes they're just flat out hate and ugly. But the point is,
I get really tempted when that happens for me to use sarcasm and make fun of them. I get
right.
really, but I've just. And I'm not saying I'm above it even today, but
right.
it's so tempting.
Right.
But I just realized it doesn't have me happier on the other side of it. And it obviously isn't changing their
something
mind.
you said about happy, guys, the beautiful thing about multifamily real estate as well, we're talking about medical here, but I want to pivot to multifamily for a second, is there's lots of different hats you can wear, frankly, in any commercial real estate asset
Definitely
class,
true.
honestly, because you can be the person that finds the deals, you can be the analytical person that underwrites them, you could be the person that raises the money, or any combination of the above. You could be maybe your process-driven asset. You could be the asset manager. You've got management or construction experience. There's lots of different hats, and you want to do what makes you freaking happy. Because if you do, work is play, and you never work another day in your life, right? And so, just remember that when you're playing in your happiness and you're playing in what and that'll be what you're strong in as well, then you'll be passionate. And I think you can get a feel for this guy's passion because he's doing what he freaking loves. And when you do what you love, you're passionate, and then you have the ability to influence people. And that's what's needed to influence people. And Tony Robbins has a fantastic quote, which is live with passion. So anyway, you had this epiphany. You saw this epiphany,
guy. And I want to finish this thought because I agree with you so heavily. This is the way that I have formulated it, is that money can buy happiness because money can buy you time. And with time, you can spend it with people that you love, doing activities that you love, where you love, and frankly, just doing what you want when you want.
Time freedom.
Time freedom is what enables you to be truly happy.
Yep. In the last 3 months, I've taken an 18-day trip to Italy. I've taken 2 cruises to the Caribbean. I've been invited to speak at a military conference, which was just fun for me.
Wow.
And so time freedom is a beautiful thing. And honestly, that's what I know. If you're listening or watching this, that's what you want as well. So you got to pick your freaking vehicle.
Yes.
Maybe it's medical stuff here. We're going to talk about that today and why it's exciting. The returns are great. Or maybe it's multifamily, maybe it's single family, maybe it's buying businesses. But opportunity is upon us, guys. I'm just going to tell you that. We're starting to see deals come out because of the economic environment we're in. But so you had this epiphany. You saw that. Well, now why do you think this? I want to dig down on that because that's unusual. He was so successful. You said he was 10 to 20%, 10 to 20 times higher than you were.
Yes.
He was unhappy. Why do you think he was unhappy?
He'd built a lifestyle that was only about achievement. It was achievement at any cost. This is my hallucination. I'm not inside his mind, and I'll never pretend that I know him.
Right.
I mean, I have trouble knowing myself sometimes. I'm a human being. But the way that I see it is that he was so consumed with how do I be the king, no matter the cost to my personal time, no matter the emotional state that it's driving me into, that he ended up on the other side just angry.
Yeah.
Unfulfilled.
Probably killed his relationships, killed everything else. Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. How achievement's a science. If you want to learn multifamily, get your ass to my boot camp coming up here in January. But because I'll give you the blueprint. You just got to go do it. Okay, there's no secret sauce. You just have to do it. But and if you want to learn anything, typically there's someone out there that'll give you a blueprint for it, and you just got to go learn it. But science, achievement's a science, but fulfillment is an art. You got to find what you love. You got to go and you got to give back as well. I mean, that's a big piece of it, And I get people on my show here sometimes that are freaking gazillionaires, and I can tell if they're like I was before I had my epiphany back when I first met Tony. Because I was unhappy too. I was very successful, and I had an epiphany just like you did.
Wow.
Looking in the mirror. But So anyway, so you realized you needed to do something else. How did you stumble onto medical office? Talk about how that process happened.
Sure. So over the next 6 months from that conversation at his kitchen table, I started putting leaders in my business. And then with the intention of exiting, because I knew if I stayed in that industry, first of all, my gifts and talents were not going to be maximized there.
Right.
And I could not ultimately earn what it is that I wanted to earn in the time that I wanted to work. I didn't have ambition just within the business, in the business world. I also had artistic ambitions as well. So anyway, we don't need to talk about that. The focus, though, is let's talk about how I got into investing. I remember when I was standing there in that moment thinking about passive income. And to me at that time, the idea of passive income seemed almost mythical. Almost like, yeah, right. Okay, that's BS, because every dollar I'd ever made was active. It was hard earned. Everything I'm hearing is hard work. You got to push harder than somebody else, and that's how you'll become successful. But this idea of passive income, I'm like, okay, I'm going to explore this. And just like I did to get success in my first business, I decided if I'm going to do this, then I need to be in a room with other people who are already doing this well, because I'm certainly not the first person to want to solve this problem. So I exited my business. And my first step was I'm going to join a mastermind, a real estate mastermind. So I joined a group of investors, and there's about 500 guys in the group that I was in.
500?
About 500 guys.
Wow, big group.
Yep. And most everybody there had either built their wealth with real estate or were now using their wealth to invest in real estate. And I was in the latter category. So I start looking at deals, and I have guys showing me either deals they're presenting or deals that they're investing in. And I probably look at about 120 deals in my first couple months, just really first of all, trying to understand the numbers, because all of it was
Greek.
It's a different language.
Sure it is.
So I'm trying to understand the language. And in the process, 95% of what I'm looking at, Rod, and this won't surprise you, was down the middle of the fairway, value add, multifamily apartment deals. Because that's what
tried and true. It works.
Tried and true.
As long as you don't get aggressive on the debt that you use, which is killing a lot of world-class operators right now with bridge debt. If you didn't do that, you're golden. I mean, it's a tried and true thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, though, is I'm looking at all these deals. It actually had a different effect on me, and that effect was fear. And whether or not the fear was justified, the line of thinking went like this: if everybody is doing this, I just might be catching this on the way down rather than the way up.
Valid concern. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon. There was a lot of greed the last few years. And, and you had a concern, and it ties right into Warren Buffett's famous quote, be fearful when others are greedy. You know, of course, the flip side is be greedy when others are fearful. And there's a lot of fear now, so I'm greedy as hell right now. I got my, but so you saw you saw the fact that you might be getting a little late.
Right. And even if I wasn't, I just had in my mind, I knew that I wanted to be investing to eventually offer deals to other people. I knew that I wanted to bring people together. I didn't know how. I knew it would be years away, but that was my intention. So I'm thinking to myself, these guys they've been in this game a decade, some of them, not all of them. Like, I'm not smart enough. I'm not smarter than them to be able to figure out this asset class and be able to offer deals that are unique and uniquely valuable eventually one day. So it got me thinking, what is an asset class that I could potentially catch on the upswing of a trend rather than on, it's already matured or it's on its downswing?
It's very, very astute thinking, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, the whole thing about, catching trends, the way that I think about it is, I remember a moment, I don't know if you had a moment like this, where I got my hair cut one day by my stylist when Bitcoin was $58,000. And my hairstylist was telling me, hey, by the way, if you invested in Bitcoin, now is the time to invest in Bitcoin. And it was like a voice popped into my head that said, now's the time to sell Bitcoin.
Right.
Because if somebody who's not an investment expert is telling you buy something,
right,
you're probably late to the party.
That's how it works in the stock market and pretty much anything else. Yep.
So there was a couple guys in the group that were doing what's called triple net investing. And of course, you're very familiar with this, but if there's somebody
Go ahead and describe it.
Yeah. Somebody that doesn't know what that is, triple net investing is where you have a business as a tenant as opposed to a resident, an individual. And that business agrees with your lease terms that they'll cover the property taxes, they'll pay for the property insurance, and they'll pay for all the maintenance on the property. And so your income is true, straight down the middle income.
It's
and
net.
they're
It's net of everything.
Net. Yeah. So they're essentially
Except
self-managing. Except debt. Yes, your cost is still your debt, absolutely. But when it comes to the property itself, they're self-managing. And the few guys that were in this, I noticed, they tended to be the wealthier people in the group. Really, because there's two things I think that were at play. First of all, triple net tends to be just right out of the gate a little bit more passive. Okay, especially if you don't have property managers.
It's more passive, of course. Because you're not doing anything. Yeah.
And so guys that were more wealthy, that had really strong income from other sources, they just wanted something that was a little bit more simple, okay, a little bit more passive. And then second of all,
so excuse me one
second.
Sure.
So
an example of this, guys, would be a Walgreens.
Yes.
Or a CVS.
Yes, that's right.
Those are typically triple net. They don't typically own the land. They do a triple net lease. So that's an example. What are some other examples that are common?
I mean, Amazon.
Amazon
doesn't own most of their land that they operate out of.
So they're warehouses. So
that's
triple
right.
net lease. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or double net or triple net. But they do that because, again, their capital is more valuable in their core business as opposed to owning the property.
That makes sense. All right. So please continue.
So sure. So there were guys that were doing this, and I thought this sounds great to me because, especially coming from the background of really having a stressful first business where I was working 70 hours a week, I was like, how can I make it as passive as possible?
Got it.
These guys allowed me to have both, where I had passive, but then I also had as much ownership and therefore as much upside potential as possible. Because if I was going to be...
So you invested in a couple of these?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about the first deal that I bought. So the first deal I bought was an industrial property. Okay, it was in the Midwest, and this is another example of types of buildings that are under triple net leases.
Sure,
manufacturing, logistics, shipping. So I got a manufacturing building, and...
I'm sorry, so you did it yourself or you invested?
Yeah, I bought it.
Okay, you didn't
I bought it
invest in
100%. No, it wasn't a
guys
syndication.
You just used, they were just an example of what you thought you
That's
might want
right.
to do. So you went out and found an industrial building.
Yes.
Continue.
Yes. And it was off market. One of the guys in the group introduced me to a broker.
Okay.
I got the deal through him and I purchased it. $3.65 million building.
So
okay.
you had a nice chunk of change from your exiting your other business.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, I used bank debt on it. So I didn't pay cash for it.
Well.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's right.
Okay.
So I purchased it, and an interesting thing happened.
So I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I just have to ask. Did you already have a tenant for it?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
yes,
all right,
there was a tenant already inside.
Okay,
Yeah, so it was going to be passive for me.
Okay.
So 6 months after purchasing it, something very interesting happened. The tenant was purchased by a large public company, and that new company extended the lease. And so literally, and I had nothing to do with it. It happened. The tenant on its own got bought out, but when I started asking brokers what my property was now worth, they said I'd added $1 million of value to my property just by who was paying the lease. And that was
because of the quality of the
the
tenant.
quality of the tenant,
Yeah.
and the length of the lease term.
Yeah. So guys, what happens is in this space, which is this triple net space, they're going to look at the financial wherewithal and grade the caliber of the tenant. And so the caliber of the tenant went way up.
Yes,
basically.
that's
Got it.
right.
Okay.
That's right. And it was truly a passive value add, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So when this happened, I was ecstatic, of course, because just by a paper being signed by somebody else, I'd added all this value without any construction or anything being done.
Right.
So that was great. And on the other hand, it spoiled me because now I want all the deals I buy to be just like this, set up for a big value add in a very short period of time.
Sure.
So I start calling brokers. And I literally, over the next 8 months, I called 1,000 brokers. And I gave them criteria that said I want it to have this kind of lease, this kind of tenant, this
so
length of
you were
lease.
looking for additional property that actually was already triple net leased.
Already
Gotcha.
leased out,
Gotcha.
yeah, and were primed for a bit. They were basically, I was getting them at a massive discount. That's what I was looking to purchase.
Okay, now let me stop you there.
Undervalued, yeah.
So what was the criteria for you to realize when you got presented a deal that it was undervalued?
So it was based on the cap rate. So I had all my basic criteria of I want a lease that, for example, is about 10 years long. Still 10 years remaining.
10 years
on it.
remaining. Got
10
it.
years remaining. It's triple net or absolute triple net.
Gotcha.
It is a certain.
Sorry, what's the difference between those two?
Yeah. So triple net is everything except for long-term capital improvements. So something like a
Like a
roof
big
repair or a
HVAC
parking
goes
lot
out. Okay.
repavings. No, HVAC would still be in a normal
Still be
triple
covered,
net.
but a roof for parking.
But a
Okay,
roof or
got it.
parking or something like a major remodel, like moving walls around. Okay. So absolute net also includes those things.
Gotcha.
So I wanted something that was like really bulletproof
One of those
lease.
two.
Yep. And I wanted a tenant that had multiple locations. So it wasn't a single location. It was at least 8 locations, like a big corporation.
Yep.
Because that would mean that
safer.
they're not going to go out of business.
Much
right,
safer.
exactly.
Lower
Chance, of course.
Blockbuster comes to mind.
Yeah,
but yes.
yeah,
but
definitely.
Less chance. Got it.
Less chance.
Okay.
That's right. So I wanted at a cap rate which is either at or above. I think it was 8.5% is what I was looking at, or 9%. And so I start
based
calling
on
brokers.
actuals.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And so I start calling these brokers, and one by one they say, "Look, buddy,
You're
if
kidding
I found this deal,
I'm buying it.
I'm buying it,
Yeah,
or
right.
I'm going to sell it to my buddy who I've already done 20 years of deals with. I'm not going to give it to a fresh face."
Right.
And I'm pretty persistent, so I kept trying anyway for a while. Clearly, I'm a slow learner in this context. But one day, this one broker took me aside, and he was very, very nice. He took the time with me to explain that, look, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to make this money. You're trying to like set yourself up really well with your capital that you've worked very hard to acquire. If you're wanting to do this, here's what I'd recommend. And he explained to me, focus on medical space. And for whatever reason, medical, even more so at that time, not a lot of people that are high net worth individuals were focusing on it. Right. A lot of the bigger institutions are buying it, but he saw that there were a few of these medical companies, the people that were buying them were doing very well with it. So he said, look, if you want to be in something that's going to be around a long time, that the market hasn't quite adequately priced yet,
Just
try
to be
medical.
clear, you said the companies are doing very well. Not the medical companies. You saw operators that were working in the space, providing space to these medical companies.
That's right.
I
The
just wanted to
landlords.
clarify
The
what you
landlords.
just
Yes,
said.
yes,
Got it.
yes.
Okay.
But they were doing well because they were working with tenants that were very good, that were very stable, and so it was unusual for these medical corporations to go out of business. So anyway, he explains this, and he said what you should consider doing if you're looking for larger returns in a short period of time is development, where you're gonna manage construction, and what you'll do is this. He explained the model very simply. You go to a tenant, you get them to you try and find ones that are looking to expand to new locations that already have a certain number of locations, and this is the script. You say, hey, I'll pay for the land on a new location. I'll pay for all your build out. And in exchange, you're going to sign a long-term triple net lease once the building is built. So you're going to give me passive income for 15, maybe 20 years once I finish building it. And not all of them will agree, and certainly not all of them will agree at the rental rate that you're looking for, but some will. And when you find those, get all the agreements signed, buy the land, and then once it's done, sell it.
Do you typically have the land selected when you approach them? Do you have a lot selected? Or
Good question.
Okay.
So I find the tenant first. Always find the tenant first.
Just that expresses interest.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
And say, I'm on the hunt. I'm going to find something. When I do, would you like to see it and have a conversation
That's
about
right.
me buying it? Okay.
Yeah, so I get all the basics together. Like, here's our basic lease template that we're going to have. So we're negotiating all those elements.
Right.
What guarantees I want,
Right.
what responsibilities each of us have, the rental rate. All that is, the rental rate does change a little bit based on construction costs and things like that. But anyway, we'll get to that later. But yes, I get them to say, yes, we want it. And then when I find a piece of land, I'll then present it to the tenant and say, hey, does this match? Like, can we get the building plans drawn up? And if it works for you, then I want you to sign at the rental rate that we've agreed to before I close.
Right.
So that I'm not holding the risk of...
Before your money goes hard. Frankly.
Exactly.
Right.
Or in that due diligence period. That's right.
Okay.
So
you've pre-framed the relationship.
that's right.
You go out there and find a great location. You probably get a non-circumvention agreement signed, and so they can't go around you or bring somebody else in.
That's right.
And then you say, if when I'm going through the due diligence, it looks like it's zoned properly, the entitlements are right, blah blah blah, all the things you got to work on when you're developing, and let's sign the lease and we'll get this baby done.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
Okay.
And what's important to note about this is I was not actually managing the development myself. I added a partner.
Sure you did.
That has the experience of doing this. I have a couple different options, but one a decade, another 3 decades in this business, and hundreds of millions in transactions. So knowing that this is not my area of expertise, I want somebody else that can handle that portion.
Now, what surprised me is that you sell these. But so talk about that. So, So you build them. You throw in an urgent.
So I haven't sold all of them. So I'll explain. So I did this. I did this model with one tenant that right out of the gate was like, yes, let's do this. And I did first 3 urgent cares, and I just wanted to. I didn't take any outside investor money because again, I'm sort of testing a model here. Sure. Like I want to make sure, is this going to work? And I just wanted to grow my own money first.
So you did 3 urgent care centers.
3 urgent cares
with your own resources.
With my own capital. Yep. And I purchased them, and then. The way that this worked is 2 of them I sold the same day that I closed on them. So I did what's called a double close transaction where I purchased it for one price, basically arranging all the components of the deal.
I'm sorry, you purchased the land or this or I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the same day I purchased the land,
I
had the lease go into effect by the tenant. Okay. They were willing to do it that structure. This was last year that this happened.
Even though payments don't start till the building is done, obviously, but the lease starts that date.
That's right.
Gotcha.
That's right. Yep. And well, actually, no. Let me clarify that point. So I had it as part of the transaction that they would get funded enough rent to start the lease immediately, and they would have enough basically to fund the first year's worth of lease payments. This had the lease actually start immediately.
Even though they weren't occupying the asset.
That's right.
That's interesting.
That's right. Yeah.
So
and I did that because
skin in the game then.
They did. They had to get it. Yes, exactly.
So I don't understand the double closing.
Sure.
So you hadn't even broke ground yet and you'd sold it already?
That's right. Because when I took that, I had an appraiser come in and say, this is actually worth a lot more. Because of the lease starting, this is worth a lot more than what your total costs are on the deal. And then I also had a broker say, I agree, I might have a buyer that wants to get into this deal. And so then I sold. That's right.
So help me understand why one of these urgent cares would be paying you rent on a space they don't even have yet. What is the advantage to them?
It was part of a package deal. So I agreed to do multiple of these properties at one time, and they're wanting to expand quickly. And because they know their development time frame is of a certain amount, I agreed to fund as part of the transaction the first bit of rent that they'd need during the development time, plus a few more months. So they'd actually get more or less a few free months of rent as part of the transaction. So and have some operational costs.
But I don't understand how you got them to pay anything.
So they didn't pay anything.
As
part of the transaction that I agreed to pay that rent.
I misunderstood you. You were paying their rent.
That's right.
No,
they're not
paying rent. Okay, I completely misunderstood what you were saying. Okay, that just didn't make any sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
So you just flipped it. I mean, basically, it was a flip. Really, is what it was.
Yeah.
It's like you
on
flip
2
a
of them,
house.
and then one of them I closed on it with my own capital, and then sold it a month later.
I see.
So
why sell that one a month later? You didn't see the benefit of cash flowing it.
No, I just wanted to increase my own capital so that I could then buy the next deal.
Do more stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So then I purchased an emergency room with my own.
What's the difference between an urgent care center and an emergency room?
So basically, an emergency room is just like a big urgent care.
Okay,
it's just a larger,
bigger urgent care.
Right.
So that's just what they're called, an emergency room. So it's more sophisticated. They can actually handle
24-hour service is included. That they handle more types of surgeries, more types of
Gotcha. Okay. So you did an emergency room.
Yeah, and so I bought this one for $8.5 million, and then an appraiser comes in and says it's actually worth $11.987 million. And so
before you even break ground, before it's done.
That's right, because of again that same
lease,
structure
based on,
with that
based
lease.
On based on the lease, and
based
they,
on
they back
comps
into the
of what-
NOI.
Yep.
They back into the NOI just like you do on multifamily.
There you go.
Remember, guys, commercial real estate's based on a multiple of the net income. So what they did is they analyzed what they anticipated the net income to be, and they came up with a value higher than the construction cost.
Mm-hmm. In this case, it's a little different than multifamily in that you know because of the lease what the net income is.
Yeah, because you're right, because you know what the expenses, they're covering all the expenses.
That's right.
It's much easier.
Yep.
You're not, there's less projection.
Projection.
Or
Less pro forma.
Less pro forma.
Yes.
Less guesswork.
Yes,
Really.
yes.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
So when the bank went to offer me debt on this property, they actually offered me more than what my purchase price was. So even with it cash flowing, I actually got $10.1 million loan on the property.
No kidding.
So
You got money day of closing.
it's like a money day at closing.
Wow.
Yeah, which wasn't actually what I expected when I first put it under contract. But then when that appraisal came back, I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So those were in total, I did about $18.5 million worth of properties that I purchased, and then sold or refinanced them for a value of $25 million.
Right. Fantastic.
So with each of them.
Fantastic. So now, I know your domain name on your company is passivemedicalrealestate.com.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're ready to start bringing in investors, syndicating, and going bigger. Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're going to focus on Texas. I think that's
That's
your
right,
market.
yeah.
That's where you live. Are you in Dallas or where?
I'm in Austin, but my properties right now are in Dallas. I have more
Gotcha.
tenants that are looking to expand there
Gotcha.
than I do in Austin. So
Yeah. Austin's a great market. It's hard. I mean, it's insane how crazy it is there.
Mm-hmm.
I've got assets in San Antonio that are benefiting from. I've got an asset right now under contract in San Antonio. If you're accredited, go to rodslinks.com and check it out. It is a screaming deal. But we're getting people that can't afford Austin that are going to San Antonio,
Right.
which is making San Antonio really boom.
Yep.
But so you're in Dallas. Okay.
Well, I think they consider that as just one metro.
Do they
Austin,
now?
San Antonio.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, Austin, Round Rock, San Antonio is kind of all one thing.
Interesting.
And it's the fastest growing metro in the United
country.
States.
Yeah, in the country. Yeah, which is why we're excited about this particular deal. It's a mile away from another 296 unit asset we have, and it's nicer. And we're paying $100,000 a unit. The one right next door sold for $137 in the last year. That's how good a deal it is.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
Very
pretty
nice.
freaking exciting. But so you're going to go out there and do more of these urgent care centers. You're going to go out there and do more of these emergency rooms. You're going to syndicate them. So you're going to let other people have a piece of the pie.
That's right.
Freaking
That's
love
right.
it, man. Freaking
Yeah.
love it.
So, I mean, I did really well. We've already talked about some of the numbers on those first few deals. And then when I
Right.
started explaining it to my friends that both were in real estate, but even more the people that weren't already in real estate, like from my previous industry, they're saying, look, can you just like bring me a deal and I just jump in with you? Because I don't want to learn about this.
Right.
Like, I don't want to go find the deals, find the tenants. It's all the same stuff
Right.
with passive investors. And then some doctors started telling me, some dentists started telling me. And so I got invited to speak to some groups about my deals because what was interesting is when I talked to people that were specifically like doctor groups or specifically dentist groups, they're very familiar with how stable the income of medical businesses are because that's their business.
Sure.
And they've never thought about actually being an owner on the property side, or if they have, it's just for a practice where they own, where
they're
are
in the
tenant.
building and they buy the building.
Yes,
Right? Yeah,
but they don't-
that's very common.
Yes, but they don't think about investing passively into syndication or into a deal where they can participate in
haven't
just
got
the
the
pure
time to screw
upside.
with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And,
yeah.
And no, I mean they'd be your best source of investors in my opinion because they're familiar with it.
Exactly.
They're familiar with the stability. There's 80 million baby boomers getting old and I say getting cold. They're moving south, but
right.
in
That's
this
right.
country and medical it's going to continue to explode.
Yes.
And as is assisted living and all the things associated with aging, but which is another thing I'm interested in. Well, this is a fascinating endeavor that you're into, and I'm really glad that we're talking about it, and I'm personally interested, frankly. But let me ask you this: if
Sure.
it wasn't for this, what other business might you be in?
Well, another business that I am actually in is I'm a filmmaker and a film actor as well.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I was a
Okay.
kid, my dream was to be an actor, is to be in film and to be in plays. That's what I love to do more than anything was be in
Okay,
plays.
You're a pretty dramatic, passionate guy. So
thank
I
you.
can totally see that.
Thank you.
Okay, so have you done anything
Yeah,
yet?
yeah. So I've done a few films since I exited my company. I had a lot more free time, obviously,
Right,
now to
right.
do that. And I'm actually, I'm actually debating whether or not I can say this on the show. I'll just say it. So I'm actually cast into a film that I'm co-starring with Anthony Hopkins as well, which will be filming in the first part of next year. Yeah, I'm actually in a bigger role than he is, which is super interesting. But it was an honor to film with him. And
he's a rock star.
He's one of my favorite just actors of all time, top three.
Absolutely.
So he's extraordinary.
In the Hector Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal Lecter.
Oh my God, what an incredible acting.
So the reason why, and I'm really glad you asked me this question, because I think that every single person has a childhood dream. They have a dream, and most people, most adults, forgot about it a long time ago. They just told themselves a story about it's not responsible, or I can't really make a living at that, or I can't really have enough time to spend doing that. And I think it is the duty of every investor to invest in a very specific way, or build a company in a very specific way that allows you to recover that, reclaim your childhood dream. Why? For the reason that you explained earlier, Rod, and that is the world needs more people that are on fire with their life, that they're happy, they're full of joy. Because why? Because they're going to bring that to their families. They're going to bring that to their communities. I want to be in a world, and I want my children to grow up in a world where people are happier, where they're full of joy. And that is only going to happen if more people have more time feeling more free to do the things that they love.
No, it's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. So I have a lot of listeners on my show that are aspiring investors. More active than passive, probably, but both, honestly, both. And a lot of them haven't pulled the trigger. You know, they get caught in analysis paralysis, or held back by fear or limiting beliefs, of which you know a lot because you've been around Tony, and you know, speak to them. Speak to them for me.
Well, I think the most important reason why somebody is in that analysis process, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why. 3 very quick reasons why. First of all, they're allowing the primary influences in their life to be from people that don't have what they want. So maybe it's their parents.
Peer group.
Maybe it's their parents that are saying, hey, like, you know, be careful, be so careful. And of course you should be careful investing, of course. But you also need to understand, you got to get in the game if you're going to make progress in your life.
You got to take some risk. I remember my mom telling me, oh, that's too dangerous. Don't do that. Don't buy houses. My God, that's too dangerous. And my dad was like, go get a real job, you know?
Right,
you know?
right.
He worked at Continental Airlines for 36 years and got laid off. Yeah. So, you know, that's a real job. But anyway, please continue.
So start surrounding yourself with more people who are those risk takers, who are the people that are experiencing more joy, who are having a little bit more time for you. And it doesn't mean you got to go have this dramatic life change in 2 years. You're going to quit your job forever, whatever. Right. You don't have that in your mind, but just a little bit more freedom every single year, a little bit more investing every year, little by little. Some people are just, I get it. They're not going to sell their car to pay for a mentor. They're just not, and that's okay. I wouldn't tell somebody ever to do that.
Right.
That was my choice. That's what I needed at that time. However, first is peer group. Get into a different peer group.
Right.
Number 2 is start practicing gratitude more consistently. And I'm not just talking about mental gratitude or written gratitude, not that alone. Felt gratitude in your heart. Because a lot of reasons why people get stuck in paralysis is because they're living in fear. And the antidote to fear is gratitude.
You can't be fearful and grateful at the same time. Can't be angry and grateful at the same time. Gratitude is the most powerful emotion we have available to us.
Yes.
Strengthens our immune system, lowers our blood pressure, brings us closer to our spirituality, and it's how you manifest everything you want in life. You know, I do gratitude most mornings. I'll sit in my recliner and I'll just be grateful for the people I love in my life, my foundation, the work that I do, my students. And then I'll do gratitude for things that I want as if I already have them. And sometimes I'll get emotional being grateful for things I don't even have yet.
Yes.
And people are like, oh, for God's sakes, stop talking the woo-woo stuff. Well, this is how I had $50 million to lose and how I freaking got it back, okay? So, you know, there you go. So second is gratitude.
Second is gratitude. And then number 3, thank you, Rod, for stealing my thunder, is already, so it's easy, fun, already done. So if somebody wants to remember easy, write that down. Easy, fun, already done. Easy means follow a proven path. Be around mentors. Number 2 is fun. What makes life more fun? The antidote actually is gratitude. You will enjoy your life so much more if you just notice, if you just take time to feel what is already here that's already good. And then number 3 is already done. See the future that you want. See yourself enjoying those passive income distributions, seeing that operator writing you that check that is bigger than the one you deposited, and you forgot that you even invested with them because it was passive for you, or whatever your situation is. But imagine the benefits of investing coming back to you and feel it as if it's already here. Because like you, Rod, every morning I sit and I see that future that I want as if it's already here, and I get emotional. I start crying. I see myself impacting that person. I see those messages of people saying, thank you so much, Sterling. This investment, this talk, this whatever changed my life. I see the difference. I see myself acting in that play or that film. And that gives me such drive and focus and purpose to show up that day as my very best self. And frankly, to enjoy the process. I think that a lot of people focus only on achievement, but they don't focus enough on having joy throughout the process. The whole point of achieving really is to get a specific emotion, and you can give yourself the gift of that emotion right now and carry it all the way through your achievement. Yeah. So for the person that feels stuck right now, is not taking that action, if they focus on those three things, they will get themselves into an action-taking state and therefore enjoy the benefits that come with it.
No question. I couldn't have said it better myself, brother. That's very well said. And another thing to remember, you mentioned story, and stories hold people back. So be careful what the story is you're telling yourself. You know, if it's a disempowering story that you're just using to justify your mediocre existence or your settling. People use stories to settle. And so, you know, change your story, you can change your life. And so keep that in mind. And yeah, I will tell you, some of the things we do at my boot camps, we will actually have you visualize that life like you do. We'll have you visualize it. What you do from the minute you get up to the moment you go to bed. That's one of the things we do at my boot camps.
Nice.
Because that pulls you into it. You know, just like the goal setting, just like, you know, determining what it is you want and why you want it. The more of that you can associate with, the more it pulls you into it. And it's very, very powerful.
It's
very
so
exercise.
important. Every time I speak at events, I do some version of visualization. And the reason why is because it's those moments that have changed my life, especially the habit of them have changed my life. So I always want to give you a little taste of how good it feels, and then give them encouragement. Please keep doing this.
Well, I mean, you were downstairs in my exercise room doing some affirmations.
That's
probably
right.
Doing some forward-thinking visualization,
yes.
I would guess.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's this because it works, guys. I know it's airy-fairy, foofy, but this is why we're successful. And so ignore it at your peril is all I will tell you. So let me ask you a question. You know, I do a clip every week on my podcast called Own Your Power. It's a motivational clip. And and it's to juice people and get them motivated. And we talk about goal setting, visualization, all these other things. So I like to ask my guests, where do you get your drive? What's driving you now? Okay, what's the why? I didn't see a ring on your finger. It doesn't look like you're married yet. And I don't know if you have kids yet. Do you have kids yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay,
no, but I'm intent on having them.
Okay,
yes. Right. I'm going to get emotional thinking about this, but it really is, it comes from that moment back in my car on New Year's Eve where I got connected to this idea that I'm not the only one suffering right now. I'm not the only person that feels hopeless, that feels powerless, that feels like they're not enough, that's been telling themselves that story for their entire lives. There's somebody else right here, right now, that needs someone to say, you have permission. You are good enough. You are worthy. You are meant for more. It's time to claim that. And it was the faces of those people in my mind that drove me to do whatever it took to succeed so that one day I could speak to them, whether it be just in person sitting across from me at the dinner table, or it was on a stage to a group, or is on a podcast where I'm so grateful you and I get to speak to quite a few people right now. My hope is that if only one person could hear this message, hear these stories and say, man, I am meant for more in my life. I have been playing small. I am capable of more, and I am claiming it now, then I will have so much joy at the thought of that. So it is that person. It is lifting one other person who, like me, just has been insecure, has been stuck, who knows they're meant for more. That is who drives me.
That's what drives me too, brother. I'm sure you get a lot of love already from your speaking. I would guess that you get accolades, you get people telling you they're grateful for hearing your messaging. And When I tell you, this is not ego, when I tell you I get love every single day, I'm not exaggerating. I get emails, DMs, gifts, cards every single day. I've got a wall in my office with hundreds of thank you cards, and it's an incredible blessing.
Well, let me stop you there, because when I mentioned to a few of my friends that are investors that I was coming to do this episode with you today, I actually was not very familiar with your work before maybe a month or 2 months ago. But I started explaining, hey, what do you think about Rod? I'm going to go see him in his studio. And one by one, every single one that knew who you were said, wow, Rod, he's a great guy. And you know what their second thing was? He's a mindset guy. You're going to love him. He's a mindset guy. So you are greatly and deeply loved by the investor community.
Very kind of you, brother. Very kind of you to say that. That means a lot to me. That means a lot to me. Well, listen, brother, I really appreciate you actually getting in a plane and coming here to meet with me. That's an honor, frankly. I'm humbled by that. I don't take that lightly, and you've added tremendous value today. Forget even the medical piece. Really, the mindset piece and the inspirational piece is really, what you're gonna be known for. I can tell already, and you're gonna do amazing things. And it's absolutely my pleasure to meet you, brother.
Wow, thank you, Rod, so much, sir.
All right, well, I'm sure we'll see each other again very soon.
I look forward to it.
All right. So one other quick thing: we encounter so many people that are frankly frustrated. They're looking in the mirror and they're frustrated that they haven't been able to escape the rat race. They haven't been able to build cash flow to the point where they're able to have financial and time freedom with their families. And maybe they see other people buying real estate and creating, incredible cash flow, and they think, well, it's just scary. Buying apartments is intimidating. And I get it. See, that's why we created our Warrior Mentorship Program. They're our coaching students, and they've had extraordinary results. My students, I've been teaching about 5 years, and they own upwards of 140,000 units now that we know of, right? And we feel like it's just getting going. Now, we're looking to grow this group and really take it to the next level. And honestly believe that the greatest transfer of wealth could be upon us right now with this current economic environment. Everything's going on sale. So we're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework, really like a blueprint or a map, literally step by step. And then they're able to leverage our systems and our incredible network to raise money and equity, to find deals and close those deals and build partnerships, really nationwide. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more in our incredible network and take advantage of the unbelievable opportunities that are upon us, you can apply to my Warrior Mentorship Program by texting the word CRUSH to 72345, or you can go to mentorwithrod.com. And what we'll do is we'll set up a call so you can check us out and we can check you out and see if it's a fit. Now, again, you can go to mentorwithrod.com or text the word CRUSH to 72345 to apply, and we will speak soon.